he's talking to Donald Trump, and Trump's going to be here maybe in February, or Starmer there talking about this. But at the same time, in the last week, he's made it very, very clear he wants us to be much closer to the European Defence Union. He's talking to what is... I mean, it seems to me, Robert, to begin, it's quite difficult to do NATO and the European Defence Union. There's a potential conflict. Where is Starmer really on defence?
Well, I don't know, and that's what worries me, because they seem to be all over the place. Because I will go further up the line. The great thing, the 17 big reports and inquiries was the SDR, which was to shape modern forces for modern contingencies, for modern times, and above all, security and resilience at home. Rachel from Accounts has got hold of it, and they have been told, I'm getting this from people involved in the inquiry, no, you've got no money, you've got no money, you may even have less money, is the implication to some of them. So it's a cost-cutting exercise. I think that the three principals in the SDR are not very pleased about that, because that was not the original remit. Let's start from that. Go on to your very good question about Tallinn and what Starmer said. The European Union, before it was the European Union, attempted defence. Do you remember the Western European Union, the WEU, which was really a feeble offspring? And as long as you had a Cold War and serious confrontation, and don't we still have that? We have it in a very different form now. NATO had to take the lead. NATO will have to take the lead anyway. And somebody must be telling Starmer that you've got to set your priorities in order. NATO has operational planning to a degree that there's no possibility of getting it out of the EU. It's done in Mons. And then at the lower operational level, you have two basic hubs and traditions, one very hollowed out, but it's the Brits and the French. If you're going to have to project force, the utility of force, as our best general of the last 40 years, Rupert Smith would say in his famous book, you have got to have credible projection of power. When we're sending tanks up to the tank ranges at Castle Martin with no ammunition for their main guns, or no allowance for ammunition for their main guns, as Rupert Smith said to me the other day, we haven't got a proper army.
I mean, that is, Kwasi, you guys were in charge for 14 years. Historically, we've always thought, perhaps wrongly, that the Conservative Party was stronger on defence than Labour. From everything we're being told by Robert, who does know his onions, it's a shocking state of affairs.
The initial problem we had was coming in 2010, we had that huge budget deficit, and George Osborne, the then Chancellor, decided that, he had to balance the books, or attempt to balance the books in some way. And I'm afraid, as a result of that, the defence budget got quite severely hit. I mean,
and they made choices, and as it turned out, not terribly good ones.
That's right. And I think that was the original problem we had, dealing with the deficit. And I think his view, privately expressed, was that there weren't many votes in defence. I think that was.
I think that's a terrible mistake, and I think the present government is making the same mistake.
And I think they're making exactly the same mistake as we did initially. And I think the main problem they have is that there is no money. So they're in a position...
Well, but it's all about priorities.
If you look at the Army's offer on that thing, and say what you do, how many people are involved, get their money, generate wealth for this country, connected with the Army and the armed forces?
Huge
numbers. It's about 500,000 families.
No, that's true.
And,
if you look at the MOD
they're not
itself,
looking at it
one of the issues with the MOD is that there was a huge amount of bureaucracy. I mean, there's some brilliant civil servants there, but there were tons and tons of them. And I remember looking at the numbers.
You didn't just go after the bureaucracy. I mean, even as late as 2017, you were cutting the numbers in the standing army and replacing them with reservists, and they do a very good job, reservists. Right. But they aren't a replacement for full-time people that go through the ranks. And we now are at a situation where Britain is one of the least contributors of personnel to peacekeeping missions around the world. And that, I think...
But rather than going back, I mean, we've had a look at the back. We've had a look back, and that's absolutely right. Yeah. But, I mean, I very much take the view, and I think Robert agrees with me, we really don't know where Starmer actually stands on this.
That's true.
It's very well...
They're not setting, despite what they said in the campaign and the manifesto, they are not setting defence. And most people in defence would like to change the name to resilient security.
That's right.
I mean, it's food, the domestic production of food and energy, the kinds of things we were deciding, is not related to security. Absolutely is core.
It's a much wider
and it's a priority. This government, I feel, is not setting a priority on this.
I think that's totally unfair. We have got a clear pledge to up the spending, which has not happened before, even though the finances are tight. There is a clear pledge to invest in new equipment and new developments. And this concept that you're saying, is it NATO versus Europe?
Yeah.
I don't think it is NATO versus Europe. I think clearly NATO is going to be the main player. But with a changing Trump and with Europe on the other side, what Britain needs to do is play its traditional role as the bridge.
Right.
And actually, I think Starmer
well, I
is
agree with
positioning
that.
himself
So
to be
why
the
is
bridge.
it? So why is it that when Starmer was asked yesterday, would you tell other European countries to spend their 2%? He said, oh, no, I don't want to tell other countries what to do. Surely that is our role. We are the bridge. We need to be the voice saying to Europe, pay up.
Well, look, in reality,
It's not just about the money, it's about the commitment.
Please.
No, the meeting at Tallinn, this is where I disagree with you, was about the JEF, the Joint Expeditionary Force. Does it fit within NATO or work with NATO? As conceived, it was supposed to be an adjunct for a very discrete need on the Northern Arc. I could go blah, blah, blah with jargon and militaro-babble.
Sure.
What those 9 nations were looking for was for leadership and put your money where your mouth is from Britain. And that's why they are fed up with Starmer's. He's a lawyer. He's a lawyer. It's lawyer babble to his fingers.
I agree with you. He could have taken the lead yesterday. He chose not to.
Let me just say this. What Robert said was absolutely true earlier. Essentially, the European powers that exist in defence, in this space, are Britain and France. You know, let's not beat about the bush. And if you speak to French politicians who are cited on this issue, they will want to do a deal with Britain. I'm sure the French military, they're not interested really in combining their forces or being under, God forbid, German generals or Italian generals. They are interested in working with the UK. And I think realistically, that's something that certainly when we were in government, we talked about. But the idea that we're going to have it a European-wide...
on the European side of the pond, this needs British leadership for us to guarantee a strong...
And that's much harder outside of Europe.
Final word on this debate to Robert.
Yeah, one thing that I fear, and I'm not convinced by the defence of the Labour record nor what happened in the past. I'm not saying it's all bad. There has got to be a clear sense of direction. By mid-February, whatever the state of the Strategic Defence Review is in, because we're going to have a new presidency, Europe is going to be asked, it's bound to be asked to do a lot more by the Trump administration, even for practical reasons. Whoever was there was going to ask for this. They've asked for notional sums of, can you up your general spending to 5%? And they're saying we're going to take 3.5%. What the Starmer administration has to understand is that this is serious, this is real. It's not a luxury, it's an obligation, but also for the security of the nation which they're supposed to represent, it is vital.
Robert Fox, as ever, thank you very much indeed. Wake up and smell the coffee, everybody. In 32 days, Trump becomes the US president. Now, during Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we're hearing from church leaders, ministers across the country. Today, we have a special message coming to us from Fareham in Hampshire.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 18.
Hi, I'm Richard England, Vicar of Crofton Parish. I wonder how good you are at asking for help. Some of us find it quite hard. We take pride in doing things ourselves, even if it takes longer or proves unsuccessful. Asking for help seems like weakness. The Christmas story, though, is God coming to help us, to redeem us and our world from the mess that we've got ourselves into. But in order to acknowledge that, to recognize that, it means we have to be honest that we might need help. Christmas story says that help is here and hope has come, but it offers us a question and a challenge. Are we willing to ask for the help that we have been given?
Well, they're very, very nice and timely messages. In a moment, we are going to discuss social housing, in particular, what Westminster Council is choosing to do. Who is social housing actually for? Is it for British-born people or not?
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and he did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Westminster Council have put out an advert saying they're looking for people to apply for social housing from February 2025. An advert with some promotional videos. Let's have a look at some of them, shall we?
بالقوائم سوف نقوم بإرسال معلومات إضافية إليكم مباشرة. شكرا.
Amra zanatam sayar the Westminster Council amra housing register system lo budlaitam.
Well, I'm sorry, but and there's a whole load more of that, all right? Now, there have been complaints about this, and they have now taken down those videos. But let's have a look at the scores on the doors, and let's see whether we think this is fair. Now, Westminster is a very expensive part of the country to rent. The average rental per month for a two-bed flat is £3,200 a month. Yet, if you rent off Westminster Council, they'll charge you £677 a month. And looking nationally at the figures, and this is really interesting, 16%, 1/6, of UK-born people are currently living in social housing, compared with 17% of foreign-born people, but that goes up to 30% amongst the low-skilled migrants that have come here from sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, this is astonishing. This destroys all the arguments that are made for immigration. We're told that immigration is great, it helps us, it makes the country richer. It seems pretty clear to me from just something like this that actually it isn't making us richer, and it's making a lot of British-born families feel very, very resentful indeed. Lloyd, this is not a new phenomenon. This has been going on for a very, very long time. But just looking at those straightforward numbers, you can see why people, and you must have had complaints as an MP about the lack of access to social housing. These figures are not great.
I had lots of complaints about the lack of access to social housing, the selling off of social housing, the failure to rebuild social housing. I mean, selling off social housing in itself is not a problem if you're building good quantities, because it's actually then adding houses to the point. Now, let's talk about the Westminster numbers. Yeah. That average rent is the average rent in the private sector, not the average rent of a lot of people living key housing, social housing. And that 600 figure is nationally set by the national government. So it's not a Westminster Council thing. It's that there is a national social rent that is charged, and that, of course, is a fair amount across the country, but in Westminster it's quite a stark difference. You want key workers living in Westminster, you want cleaners and chefs and etc., because you want communities have to operate and you need people living locally.
What sort of communities? Those that speak English or not?
No, well, you need communities.
Why are we doing adverts in foreign languages?
Well, look,
why?
I don't know why you're doing adverts in that way. You would ban it, I know. But look, I think the point is that if people have residency, bearing in mind, if someone arrives here and they're on a work visa, they're not eligible for any of this housing, any support whatsoever. It's clearly stamped in their passport. They are not eligible. But after a number of years, once they start to settle down here and they have a family, 5 years usually is but 5 years they've got to settle down with. Then they are eligible, and sometimes they don't speak very good English. And what Westminster Council is trying to do is get that. Now, I think we should have free language lessons for all people that arrive in this country.
Who's going to pay for that?
And well, you could,
the taxpayer.
Well, yes, but you could
for free language lessons. I mean, generally, lots of other countries have a language test before they're allowed to get in.
Lots of countries have free language lessons. When I lived in France or in Belgium, you could enter. I did very badly at it because my French is appalling.
I think that's insane.
Quasi 30%.
No.
30%.
It's crazy.
Mostly Somalia.
So that's right.
Come from sub-Saharan Africa are in social housing.
So the problem with
this is outrageous.
So the problem with it, and I think you're right, is that you're creating perverse incentives. Because the people in those countries all know that if they come here, they're going to get free housing and subsidised. Well, they can.
Well, they are.
And that's what they're doing.
Well, I know you did have an open borders policy, but Labour is stopping that now.
What are Labour going to do?
Turning the tide.
What are Labour going to do?
We are going to make sure
the Labour Party.
I tell you what, guys, we might be making a joke of it. I bet you people at home
it's ridiculous.
are seeing these numbers and they'll be angry.
It's ridiculous. And I think
it's a poverty issue more than it is a race issue. Let's be honest.
I agree with that, but the problem you have is you're creating perverse incentives because the people who have friends, family who come here and get nice free housing, they all know in Somalia, they're all vastly subsidised.
They don't get free housing. What's happening is these people are coming over, we're underpaying them.
Forgive me.
We're paying them too little, and they can't then afford to live, and then we have to subsidise their housing. We should make them be paid proper wages.
Before you get down the left wing, the socialist, argument,
we're paying proper wages.
There are clearly perverse incentives in this. It is clearly wrong that people coming from thousands of miles away are getting preferential and more access to social housing than people who are born here. No matter what their origin. The
numbers tell a story.
And actually, I'll tell you something. I mean, I was a candidate in Brent East in 2005, the general election, and it was the most socially, racially diverse constituency in the country. And the people who were complaining most about on this sort of issue were recent migrants, were people who felt that the people who were coming in after them were getting huge benefits and they hadn't paid into the system and there was no sense of fairness. And I think you're just going to double down on this. I think this particular issue with those numbers doubles down on the issue of fairness and the issue of people who have paid in getting their fair due.
I think fairness is the key to all of this, actually. The public perception of what is fair and what is reasonable, and I can assure you,
after
this
5
makes people
years,
angry.
if you've been here for 5 years, you're a permanent resident here now, you've fulfilled all the visa requirements, should Westminster Council say, no, you can't come because you're Somalian, we won't help you? That seems outrageous. It should be based on needs.
I wonder how many of these 30% of Somalians have actually gone through the right channels to get here in the first place. You know, frankly,
and anecdotally, I mean, if you go to Somalia, I mean, I remember visiting there about 10 years ago. And, I was pointed out a very nice house. I said, who's built that house? So it's like, our friend...
Somalia's a basket case. It's in civil war. Somaliland we should recognise and actually allow a decent...
Before you get on your high horse...
That I don't disagree with.
Before you get on your high horse, there are a lot of remittances from people essentially living off the welfare state into their homeland. That's happening, whether that fits into your scheme or not.
On a scale. Gentlemen, Our next segment is going to be about the London taxi charity and a recent theft. And so I'm going to say goodbye to my panel. I'm going to wish them both a happy Christmas. Plans, Kwasi?
I'm going to be in Derbyshire with my in-laws.
Very good. Lloyd?
With the family for Christmas and some summer sun, some winter sun for New Year's.
Well,
I don't want people following me there. So
Is that a state secret?
Gentlemen, thank you. Both regulars on this show. You both contribute very well to our debates. A Westminster City Council spokesman has said, "We took the video down because it did not convey the message we wanted it to." I bet it didn't. Added, "The council complies with the national criteria for allocating council homes to our local residents, prioritising those with greatest need. We provide translations into commonly spoken languages to ensure anyone entitled to apply for social housing is able to understand and follow the process." Jolly good. In a moment, let's talk to a London taxi charity.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There will actually be some hazardous weather across parts of southern Europe through the next few days, with a strong Mistral wind developing over southern France and into Corsica, leading gusts here of around 70 miles per hour and some hefty showers with that as well. Further east, and we have some heavy thunderstorms pushing across parts of Greece and into Turkey, and here we could see rainfall totals building up to around 200 millimetres. Elsewhere, there will be some fine weather around, with temperatures near or a little bit below average.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News. I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Rich Isles is a plumber from just outside Bristol, and he wanted to raise money for the London Taxi charity. So have a look at his house and what he did. It really is quite extraordinary. 200,000 Christmas lights on his house. I mean, it's quite something. And obviously become a bit of a tourist attraction. He's been doing it for a few years. And he puts a bucket with some money in there for people to give towards the taxi charity. And guess what? Some absolute rotter has come along and stolen it. So first thing I'm going to do is to say, if anybody has any news about what happened there in Winterbourne Down, please get in touch with the local police as soon as you can. And there he is with a local 100-year-old Second World War veteran. But that brings us neatly on to a taxi charity for military veterans. Dick Goodwin is the vice president. Dick, I mean, I know about your charity. I've seen you boys in Normandy taking veterans back to the beaches. Just quickly tell us what the charity does.
Well, the charity does what it can for our remaining World War II veterans. We're still actively recruiting. We've got a lot of plans for next year. Next year is the 80th anniversary of Dutch liberation, which will be absolutely massive out in the Netherlands. So come February, we let the Christmas get out of the way in January. And then come February, we'll be recruiting nationwide for World War II veterans.
How did this all start?
Well, it started with 6 taxi drivers sitting in a pub in 1948 thinking the Bedford Arms in Fulham, which is still there.
Yeah.
And they thought, I know, let's have a day trip for some of our mates who have been wounded in the war.
Right.
So they got together, off they went, 6 taxis with a couple of veterans in each one. They went to Brighton the first year, and sadly we don't have the records of what happened in Brighton, but they weren't invited back. And after that they went to Worthing, and we've been going to Worthing ever since.
Right, and I've seen, I mean, the couple of the D-Day anniversaries that I've been to, I've seen an awful lot of black cabs there.
Yeah.
Dozens of you.
Yeah.
Dozens of you.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, the largest trip that we did was 2015 for Dutch liberation, and that was 96 taxis and 310 people altogether. I think 180 of them were veterans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, this rotten, and aren't some people really awful? I mean, just awful. But maybe this rotten incident, you know, maybe it has a silver lining. It gives you a chance, Dick, to talk to our audience about this. And so how much money do you need to raise every year to sort of do these big trips abroad?
You're looking at easily 100,000. I mean, sadly, as we all know, the veterans are getting less and less, and they're not all departing, but some of them can't travel anymore. So you have to put extra provisions in for them. We always try to go to the best hotels, simply so that they've got room to move around in the room. You don't want them, you know, crammed into a smaller room or whatever.
No.
So we do use the best hotels where we can, where the prices allow. But we do need to raise an awful lot of money. The charity doesn't have any staff. It has the PR lady and the IT lady on retainers. The fundraiser is on a retainer.
Yeah.
And we have no paid staff. We have no premises. So our overheads are very, very low.
Well, I think, Dick, what you do is very important. And you're right, you put it politely, to say that the numbers are dwindling. They're falling very, very rapidly.
Yeah.
We don't have many of that generation. Generation the Americans, by the way, call the greatest generation.
Yeah, that's right.
And they really do, and they mean it.
Yeah.
But I think what you do to honour the last of that generation is a very, very important thing. And Jacob, I was at Normandy for the 80th anniversary, and pretty poignant stuff, seeing Canadians, Brits and Americans back there 80 years on. Those images are powerful, aren't they?
They are extremely powerful. And we also continue to see it every year on Remembrance Sunday, where there are still a small number of veterans going along. When I was a child, the old men were from the First World War and the young men were from the Second World War. Now, even the Second World War veterans are no longer with us by and large, but the few that are great heroes, and it's wonderful that charities are looking after them, and it shows. I'm a great admirer of the London Taxi. I think they are such good public servants. They do so much for our community, and then they're going above and beyond to look after people to whom we owe so much.
Yeah, no, I think it's absolutely terrific. Well, Dick, I want to say good luck with all that you do.
Thank you very much.
Anyone that wants to give money to the taxi charity for military veterans, you can find full details on our website. So I'm sure Dick a few bob will come in as a result of it. Well done for what you do. I've been a big supporter.
I know you have. You've been wonderful what you've done for us.
I've helped over the years, and I hope this helps again. So come on, folks, give a few bob, because people going back for, as Dick says, that liberation. And even in 1945, the price of victory was not cheap. We were losing plenty of people right up to the end.
I can announce today that following this meeting, we will establish a national capability across police forces, shared intelligence, wider deployment of facial recognition technology, and preventative action, criminal behaviour orders, to restrict their movement before they could even board a train.
No, because I don't think you do talk yourself into recession. No, it's one of those things that politicians say. They say, don't talk the economy down. But actually, when the economy is booming away, nobody does. Talking it down is a consequence of weak economic results. And I'm afraid government's on the back foot, and I've heard Tory politicians do this too, say, oh no, you're talking the economy down. It's not really like that.
Well,
it's economic fundamentals that matter.
I tell you what, I was in Mar-a-Lago 2 days ago. I didn't get to see you yesterday. Yeah, funny that.
Obviously, you kept it quiet.
Obviously, kept it quiet. But what was really, apart from Elon, what was really interesting is Trump is talking the economy up.
Well, but he's got economic policies that will add to growth. He wants to cut taxes. He wants to get rid of all the green nonsense. He wants to drill, baby, drill. Why can't we do that? We've got all this shale gas, which we could get out, which is what has revitalised the American economy. 10% GDP differential per capita, UK and US, 2000, 40% lower now. That's because we've had high energy costs, because of this mad green obsession.
You're right. Our poor manufacturers and others suffering with the most expensive electricity in the world. This is my last show in this studio for this year. But tomorrow I am going to be live with a huge audience in Maidstone. I'm told I've got to deal with a couple of live reindeers, amongst other things, so what on earth could go wrong? I'll see you live from Maidstone tomorrow at 7 p.m. First, the weather with Honor Criswick.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into tomorrow, we'll see cloud clearing the southeast, leaving a day of sunny spells and showers. It is going to be feeling much colder than it has done of late, though. To start off, though, to end on Wednesday, we'll see cloud and outbreaks of rain just move their way across the far south of the country. Colder to the far north, though, as we head into the evening. Still plenty of blustery showers reaching northwestern areas, a few feeding in inland at times where they'll likely fall as snow over high ground. But elsewhere, we'll see cloud outbreaks of rain slowly push their way towards the southeast and generally turning dry, but still with those showers just moving into parts of Wales and the southwest. And a very cold start to the day, particularly in those brisk northerly winds. So around across Scotland to start on Thursday, still we'll see plenty of showers around those coastal areas, and as they do move in further inland, they're likely to fall as snow across higher ground. Similar across Northern Ireland, still a chance we could see some wintry flurries around hilly areas and just to the northwest of England too. Even across Wales and parts of the southwest, a chance we could see some wintriness in the showers over hilly areas. The driest and brightest of the weather likely to be around eastern coasts across the far southeast as well, where actually there'll be plenty of sunshine around through much of the day, but it is going to be feeling much chillier than of late, particularly in those brisk northwesterly winds. So quite a change of feel as we head into Thursday, but still plenty of showers around coasts, but lots of sunshine too. You'll just have to wrap up warm to enjoy it. Highs of around 7 to 8 Celsius in the south, but highs only reaching around 4 degrees in the far northeast of Scotland, so fairly chilly here. As we head into Friday, once again we'll see outbreaks of rain slowly push their way towards the southeast of the country, moving in from the northwest. Plenty of blustery showers behind behind this. But to the far north and far south of this rain, once again, there should be plenty of dry weather around. Turning slightly milder as we head into Saturday, but another chilly spell for Sunday and remaining fairly unsettled for the weekend. Bye for now.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News,
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation Tonight. UK inflation goes up to its highest level since March, to 2.6%. Red Rachel says we're doing as well as the United States, but is that true? After the budget squeezed businesses and attacked farmers, will it make the government any money at all? Disappointment for the Waspi women as the Work and Pensions Secretary announces they will not receive compensation from the taxpayer for so-called historic injustices. Was this campaign ever going to achieve anything? The decision to give away the Chagos Islands has upset lots of people, including the new Prime Minister of Mauritius. The country has rejected the government's deal and demanded a renegotiation, a move the Prime Minister seems intent on seeing through. But to what end? Is it time to admit defeat and actually keep Chagos British? It's long been considered that the bedrock of a healthy society is a healthy marriage, and one new report believes that remains the case even in a modern society with marriage on the decline. And does Pope Francis owe his life to MI6? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my formidable panel, former Conservative MP Sir John Redwood and historian and broadcaster Dr Tessa Dunlop. As ever, I want to hear from you. Let me know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Joe Casper.
Good evening, it's just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Joe Casper in the GB Newsroom. And your top story this evening. So Keir Starmer has today held a call with US President-elect Donald Trump. The Prime Minister's spokesman said both men agreed on their joint ambition to strengthen the close and historic relationship between the US and the UK. Mr Starmer and Mr Trump reiterated the need for allies to stand together with Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression. The Prime Minister also emphasised the importance of securing peace in the Middle East. The two men were also said to have looked forward to seeing each other at the earliest opportunity. Pleas of not guilty have been entered on behalf of Axel Rudapagana after he failed to reply when arraigned at Liverpool court on 3 counts of murder and 10 counts of attempted murder following the deaths of 3 young girls in a knife attack at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport. Rudapagana appeared via video link in court as pleas of not guilty were entered to all 16 counts on the indictment. It comes as a police report published today found that officers were unprepared for the scale of the summer riots which followed the Southport attacks. The report said there were gaps in intelligence linked to social media and the dark web in the lead-up to the riots. The Prime Minister has been accused of playing politics with the Waspi women by the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch. Sir Keir Starmer is now facing pressure to give MPs a vote on his government's decision to rule out compensation for women affected by changes to the state pension age. He defended his position during PMQs earlier today.
Serious issue, it's a complex issue. The research, as he knows, shows that 90% of those impacted knew about the changes that were taking place. And I'm afraid to say the taxpayer simply can't afford the tens of billions of pounds in compensation when the evidence does show that 90% of those impacted did know about it. That's because of the state of our economy.
And finally, GB News understands this lunchtime that Prince Andrew, after speaking to Sarah, Duchess of York, will not attend the pre-Christmas lunch hosted by the King at Buckingham Palace tomorrow. It's thought Sarah Ferguson advised her ex-husband not to attend following the alleged Chinese spy scandal, as first reported in the Daily Mail. The King's brother has already pulled out of attending the Royal Christmas gathering at Sandringham over Christmas. We'll bring you more on that story as we get it. Those were your latest GB News headlines. I'm Joe Casper. More from me in an hour. Now back to Jacob.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. It's no surprise that Labour's budget measures have made the economy weaker. Inflation is up to 2.6% from 2.3% in October. But according to Red Rachel, this is fine because we're in the same boat as America.
The inflation numbers today show inflation at 2.6%. That is comparable to other countries around the world. In the United States, it's 2.7%, so slightly higher. In the euro area, it's 2.3%.
But this isn't really the case because America has been booming. Our overall economic performance is on a par with the sickly Europe, which is not an economic path we should want to be following. Unfortunately, this is a situation of stagflation, inflation of the 1970s, and it's part of a vicious cycle faced which challenges the Bank of England tomorrow. The need for lower
and ask ourselves, how did we get here? How come the big... Dear Muslims, the world is scared of us. The world is laughing at us. The world is worried about us. And there are legitimate reasons for their worry that we cannot just deny. It is time to flush the word Islamophobia down the toilet and start looking in the mirror and ask ourselves, how did we get here? How come the biggest and most dangerous thriving terrorist organization in the world are Muslim? How come terrorists successfully use Islam to mobilize more terrorists? What is the problem with our leaders, our books, our imams, and our religion? Why do we keep repeating these Stone Age traditions that have failed us and continue to fail us? The world has left us behind. The kuffar that our imams and books tell us to hate have traveled to the future, while we're still stuck in the Middle Ages, reading stories about Muhammad and his flying horse. You're watching this on your phone or your computer or tablet, created by these kuffars. The same kuffar that we hate so much have created most of the medicines that we use today. Medicine that our religion's crystal ball failed to bring about. The kuffar have moved forward and traveled into space. Meanwhile, we're stuck on Earth in the Middle Ages, going to our poisonous mosques every Friday, reciting the same chapters and the same stories of Prophet Muhammad. Why haven't all of these books and teachings led us to science and technology and medicine? We're stuck debating which sect is correct, which interpretation is correct, who is the kafir and who is the real Muslim. How can we convince the kuffar to become Muslims? Why on earth would anybody want to be Muslim today? They're all scared of us. They're all laughing at us. They're all worried about us. Delete Israel and the West from the world and we would still be as ignorant as we are, and we would still be stabbing each other as we are. Stop blaming them and look at yourselves in the mirror.
Dunlop. Tessa, Red Rachel has really bungled this, hasn't she?
For crying out loud, Jacob, that soliloquy was sort of like the Grinch come early for Christmas. I mean, it's all doom, gloom and despair. I do agree that the economy looks a little anaemic, but let's be honest, when inflation started falling, in the dying embers, in fact, of the last Conservative administration, it was because the low-hanging fruit were picked. Mainly, energy prices came down and therefore inflation came down. Actually, it's always harder to kick in the teeth that residual last percentage point of inflation. Yes, we had a crisis, particularly of morale, but not only, among public sector workers, probably to stymie the strikes, which would be carrying on right now if they hadn't. They needed to be offered a bung. They were offered that bung, and so as a result, hospitals will stay open over Christmas. My daughter didn't miss a day of school because once the one strikes, I know your children are privately educated, but for the vast majority of us, we rely on state education.
There were strikes at my daughter's school anyway last year. That's a separate matter.
Oh, I would really talk to them about that.
But the inflation figures are partly made worse by the government, by the budget decisions. That the 4.6% rate of increase for public sector workers, full 2% above inflation. The increase in duties, the tobacco tax increase has fed through to higher inflation. These are voluntary decisions of the government that are damaging the economy because it means the Bank of England can't cut interest rates.
But we knew that the legacy the Labour Party inherited was a poison chalice. It was like trying to get out of a room without a door. And I noticed that you don't pick up...
fastest growth in the G7 Act was a pretty good inheritance. They got there...
Oh, for crying out loud, John, you know that is entirely disingenuous.
It had come right after a poor period.
As I've explained, that was because universally, across the globe, energy prices fell and therefore inflation fell across the planet.
But it was also because of tax cuts and actions taken by the Conservative government to keep the deficit under control and trying to keep inflationary wage increases under control. And as soon as that genie was let out of the bottle, we're into this inflation round. And the inflation is worse than the 2.6. The wider number, which includes housing, and we all have housing costs, is up 3.5. And that's because rents are through the roof. They're up almost 10%. and people can't afford to rent a home in many parts of the country because they're not controlling the migration, and they have done enormous damage to a lot of the smaller landlords who are being taxed out of business.
That's right.
And so supply and demand is going in the wrong direction. So there's a real housing crisis, and it's very inflationary. And that is something the government ought to be immediately turning their attention to.
Tessa, John's absolutely right that lots of landlords are leaving the market. Therefore, the supply in the private rental sector is shrinking and demand remains. And therefore, rents have risen. You're finding this yourself.
While interest rates remain high, and we also have various environmental levies which are being put onto landlords and conditions and stipulations, it does mean that it is harder to make money as a landlord.
Yes,
there are issues around there that need address. But let's not pretend this has suddenly happened in the last 6 months.
Well, it's been made worse in the last 6 months, and the rents have gone up more in the last 6 months.
The truth is, the Labour Party is the first party for decades that has genuinely committed to building, and building from the bottom up, not just houses for those who can afford it, but for those who can't afford it. I noticed you immediately...
The last government increased the build rate and had targets, and this government wants to copy their targets and take them on a bit. But perfectly understandable, but they've then got to have the policies to do it. Instead, Rachel Reeves takes actions to put the mortgage rates up.
Which we saw this week.
We now have higher 10-year interest rates than we did under Liz Truss, which the Labour Party always complained about. They said that was a catastrophe. So presumably, this is an even bigger catastrophe because the rates are now higher.
I can't understand why you're jumping with ants in your pants virtually out of your seat in indignation, when I would have thought you'd have been delighted last week to discover that the Labour Party are considering building on parts of the Green Belt, otherwise known as the Grey Belt. Let's hope it's not one of your golf courses, in order that they can actually house people. And I did object, and perhaps people won't have noticed because they're so used to hearing the word migrant bandied about erroneously on GB News, but you put some of this on migrants, and that's why we need more houses. The truth is,
why we need more houses.
One of the main reasons
you can't leave them homeless, so we have to build, don't we?
But the truth is, actually, most of those new builds are because increased divorce numbers, increased people living alone,
increased length of lives. The bulk of it is 750,000 extra people a year coming in. They all need homes.
Multiple occupancy. Majority of migrants live in multiple occupancy accommodation. Right,
so
and we're talking about recent arrivals. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying don't put it all on the migrants. I'm just saying don't put it all on the migrants.
So we had over 5 million people from the European Union in the period of our membership.
I know, I live with one of them. Multiple occupancy house, we are.
And they need housing, and you have under 2 people per household. That is 2.5 to 3 million houses needed purely for EU migrants.
Most of them have gone home now, Jacob, because
they haven't actually, because they'd be counted in the net migrant figures if they were leaving.
Quite
and
a few did leave.
The net migrant figures are still very high. So migrants are a very important part of the housing crisis. John's simply right on that.
To be clear about the net migrant figure, you don't actually work out which are the new migrants coming in and who specifically are leaving. And recently, more Europeans have left than arrived. Fact.
Just before he left, Nigel Farage told me that 1/3 of Somalis are living in public housing, and that's housing taken away from people who are not here.
The last time I checked, Somalis didn't come from the EU. The last time I checked.
I know, but John was talking about the broader problem.
Peter just made the point about EU migration and actually
clarify the facts about migration having effect on housing, which it really does. And mass migration had a huge effect. Anyway, thank you to my panel. After the break, disappointment for the Waspi women, as it's confirmed they will not receive compensation from the taxpayer for the so-called historic injustices. Was this campaign ever going to achieve anything?
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were discussing stagflation quite vigorously, and the mail mogs have come in. Zoe has to say, good evening. Red Rachel's non-dom tax was going to solve most of our problems. When she realised this wasn't going to work, she went to Plan B, and that's where we are now. And Andrew says PAYE 20%, VAT 20%, NI 11%, road tax, BBC tax, corporation tax. Yes, the list goes on and on. But now the Waspi women are left disappointed today as their campaign for compensation payments to 3.8 million women born in the 1950s who claim they were not made aware of changes to the state pension age. The Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall announced the decision in the House of Commons, despite in 2019 throwing her support behind the campaign, as did the Reverend Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, who as leader of the opposition called for fair and fast compensation. The Waspi women are the latest in a long line of groups left disappointed by Labour. But the main question is whether the Waspi women should have been compensated at all and whether their decades-long campaign was ever going to achieve anything. Well, joining me now is Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, the Senior Lecturer at the University of Bedfordshire. Dr. Mackenzie, thank you very much for joining me. Don't people have some responsibility for finding out for themselves what is going to happen? Because when the pension age went up, it was extremely widely publicised. It was in all the newspapers. And it seems to me people ought to take some responsibility for their own lives.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not going to disagree with you there. But that's not my point in supporting the Waspi women. I know that that's the sort of technical issue that the government has used to get out of paying this. I know it's the technical issue, but actually there's a wider point here. And this is about treating our elderly and as people retire fairly. And I think that is what has happened with the Waspi women. They were not treated fairly. These are women who were, let me finish. These were women born in the 1950s who have worked all their lives, mostly from being 16. You know, most women of that age did not go to university and start careers. They have gone to work, they've raised children, they've probably been caring for elderly relatives as well. They always had an idea that they would be retiring at 60, and part way through their lives that has changed. And and it's about the fairness, really. So for me, this is about fairness.
OK, but they were given 20 years' notice that the age was going up. It went up from 60 initially to 65.
But it wasn't quite 20 years.
It was level. It was made level with men that Britain lost a case in the European Court on the basis that the differential retirement age was unfair. Men went to work at 16 and did all sorts of things with their families and went down mines and all that sort of thing and still retired at 65. It was perfectly fair and reasonable and was extremely well publicised. It's just I don't see what was unfair with that when people are living longer and the country has to live within its means.
Yes, but again, you know, my granddad and my dad were both men who went down the mines. So, you know, as you know, I know this argument. But I do think, and did they bring it in line? Yes. But there was a point that men was retiring at 60 as well. And what they've done over the years is they've gradually moved that up from 60 to 65. And if we're talking, and now we're on 67. So for me, this is the fairness about what these women were promised. And let's not forget, a lot of these women at some point in their lives would have taken breaks because they were raising children, and at some point has probably been asked to top up their national insurance as well, which they've done. So they have played by the rules, they've worked, they've gone to work, they've done caring, they've been a great asset to the country. And I think for the amount of money that they've asked.
No, what are we going on? Hey! What's going on at this hotel? We've had reports that illegals have been filming children at a primary school. No, what are we going on? What's going on? Don't touch me. I wouldn't touch me. Okay, you're going to stop them as well? You're going to stop two of us? Have you been at the school? You've been at the school? Yeah. Mate, you can push me all you want. We're on it now. This is disgusting what's going on here. Get off me, man. Don't push me. What are you doing? No, we're on site now. Off the site. We're on. Who are you touching? Who are you touching? You're on camera. Off the site. Off the site. Illegals have been filming children here. They've been filming children. Off the site. They've been filming children. Off the site. Get off me. Off the site. Get off me. Get off me. Get the fuck off me. Get off me. Get off me. What the fuck are you doing? Off the site. Get off. Get off the site. You're not coming in. Come on in. Come on in. Keep up, fatty. This is the hotel, guys. He's calling the police. How ironic. How ironic. He wants to call the police on me. And there's been men filming children at a school a mile up the road. Whew. What are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? Huh? You're losing your job for that, sucker? Yeah, what? Do something then. What? You protecting people that take pictures of children?
You have no evidence, mate.
What?
Where's your evidence?
There is evidence.
Where?
There is evidence.
What's the police then? Cunt.
It is. Cunt.
Yeah.
Cunt. Who the fuck are you? Get your badge out.
Fuck off.
Huh?
Fuck off, you cunt.
You do nothing. Oh, he will get hands on. He's just been launched on the floor.
It's alright, let him stay
Thinks
there.
he's a bad boy.
It's fine.
Protecting foreign criminals.
Oh, you've been launched on the floor? Good.
No, he has. Your powder.
Alright, just stay there, boss. Right, stop clenching your fist, please.
Is that how you was filming the children? MK Hotel on Buckingham Road, Dean's Hangar. And nothing to say then. Nothing to say. The residents and the locals deserve answers. Why are the children not safe? And why are you so hostile? Why are you so hostile against people with cameras?
So this kind of, oh yes, well, poor men, they die a bit earlier. Yeah, most women were often doing the same job for less money. And even today, per hour, women still get paid less than men, let alone before equal pay was introduced in the 1970s. So I think the point is, yeah, I think women got to retire earlier, but they worked for less per head because of their gender for most of their lives. And yes, they do
deserve. That's an extremely
deserve.
interesting argument, but that's not the argument the Waspy women used.
Well, it's the one that they should use. To me,
they used a completely different argument to say they weren't given fair notice.
Right, I see that, but from my point of view, if we're going to argue about whether that generation of women deserve to be given a small bung, probably on a moral case for several reasons, including the fact they weren't given fair notice, but also they weren't given equal pay, then yes, they should be given a bung. The problem is the economy doesn't allow for it. Oh,
well, they should be given the fuel grant, shouldn't they? The fuel grant, that would be the answer.
I wonder who was overseeing the economy for the last 14 years. And yes, of course, the cold hand of reality has gripped Keir Starmer on the shoulder. And in fact, he looked into the precipice and he saw this before the election because he didn't put it in his manifesto.
You're ridiculously generous to him, because it was obvious to everybody that no government was going to make this compensation, that the Ombudsman asked for too much. And Labour, when they were saying they would, knew they were speaking with a forked tongue. They're not that stupid.
But he didn't, therefore, put it in his manifesto.
No, he held up signs saying...
he was highly naive and he was disingenuous. Yes, he got it wrong.
Fair and fast compensation was what he called for.
He got it wrong, and it's disappointing.
But it's radically dishonest.
I'm also challenging
John's point is so strong that it was very tempting as a backbench MP to say, yeah, let's go for the compensation of the Waspy women. We had people writing to us the whole time. And actually we didn't, because we knew it couldn't be afforded and it wasn't deliverable. And one of the things about standing for election is you have to try and make promises that you at least think there's a chance of fulfilling.
It's extraordinary to me. Now, I was in my B&Q in Elephant and Castle, and this woman came up to me, who must have been a Waspy woman. She looked like she was born in the 1950s. She's your biggest fan. For the life of me, I can't work out why a single woman born in the 1950s would be your biggest fan. But there we have it. I agree. Keir Starmer set the mood music and he clicked the dial and he turned it in the wrong direction. And I understand fully why Diane Abbott called him out today in Parliament. And I'm very glad she's in there as the matriarch, because we need people like that talking truth to power from the Labour benches. They got this wrong. They know we don't have the cool 10 billion quid it would cost. But I feel sorry for the Waspy women.
They've got wrong for pensioners. You know, why are they doing in the pensioners?
Because pensioners are Conservative and train drivers are Labour, so they're bunging money to their own friends.
That's what I say. The Brendas of Elephant and Castle tend to vote for Jacob Rees-Mogg. Oh, but he's no longer in the House of Commons. I wonder why not.
Well, I didn't stand in Elephant and Castle, so he didn't have a chance to vote for me. But this is quite serious for Keir Starmer, isn't it? Because for the first time yesterday, when Liz Kendall was making the statement, Labour backbenchers were getting up. And we know from our time in the House of Commons that once MPs start rebelling, they get a taste for it.
Well, I think that's right. And Keir Starmer's ratings have plummeted on an amazing scale. And so he is deeply unpopular. And all those great words he said to get elected about restoring trust and truth and only promising what he could deliver have turned out to be completely false. And so people are very distraught about it all. And then when you have a Chancellor of the Exchequer that drives the economy into the ground instead of promoting growth and is inflationary in the way you and I have been describing, the public say we had enough of this already, which is why we then had 3 million signing a petition for an extremely early election.
You are doomsayers. Damn it, because there's quite a lot of good stuff going on.
We've got to move on. In a moment, Mauritius rejects the government's Chagos Islands deal and demands a renegotiation. Is it time to admit defeat and keep Chagos British? And
that's victory.
I know. Does the Holy Father owe his life to MI6? Possibly James Bond saved the Pope.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. We were talking about the Waspi women and the mail mogs have come in. Jules says, when the rise was first announced, I didn't mind. However, when it went from 63 years 10 months to 65 years and 11 months without much notice, it was hard for me. I raised children as well as work, paying large childcare fees. Feels very unfair, whatever the legalities. What with losing my £300 fuel bonus, I'm now very poor indeed. Starmer should never have courted women with false promises. That I absolutely agree with. And Anne, remember this age group didn't have equal pay. That was Tessa's point. Sorry, Jacob, I worked for DWP and I didn't know about this change until 2010 and I retired in 2016. The government's controversial decision to give away the Chagos Islands to Mauritius has hit another bump in the road as the country's new Prime Minister rejects Labour's deal and demands a renegotiation. Navin Chandra Ramgoolam told MPs the proposed deal would not produce the benefits that the nation could expect from such an agreement. With Donald Trump unhappy, Chagosians unhappy, countless parliamentarians unhappy, campaigners unhappy, and now even Mauritius unhappy, is it time for Sir Keir Starmer to accept defeat, but victory for the British, by keeping the Chagos Islands for our great country? Well, let me go to my panel, former Conservative MP Sir John Redwood, and the historian and broadcaster Dr Tessa Dunlop. Tessa, are you in the cheese-eating surrender monkey camp of giving away everything that's British, or would you like to keep this?
I'm a member of the British Committee for Returning the Parthenon Marbles, and I think along
there you go.
with...
So you want to give everything away?
Not everything, absolutely not. No, I think there can be unique cases made for certain things. If we include an archipelago as a thing, I think it's rather more than that. It's territorial. I understood why the Labour Party decided to set a precedent with this, just get it off the... It'd been sitting in the intra, it'd been sullying relations internationally, UN courts, etc., all said that actually the precedent sat with Mauritius. It doesn't really surprise me that there's a bit of brinkmanship going on. But what does disappoint me in terms of your editorial on this show is that of all the foreign affairs we could have talked about today, and given that we want a bit of cheer before Christmas, why we couldn't have celebrated John Healey in Kiev